Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the view from the opposition, and this week it comes from Ian Doyle of the Liverpool Echo. Newcastle, of course, travelled down to Wembley to face Liverpool in the Carabao Cup final on Sunday, and we're going to get all the insight into Newcastle United's opponents. But first thing first, Ian, how are you doing? You well?
I'm okay, yourself?
Yeah, good. Not too bad, thank you. I'm feeling a lot more positive and optimistic. I'm not going to use the word confident, but I'm at least a little bit more optimistic about Sunday due to events this week than I was this time last week. What about yourself? How are you looking at the final? What are your initial thoughts on it?
My initial thoughts are that Newcastle got there first, so they've nicked all the hotels, which was funny when they qualified. We were like, "There's got to be no hotels left if Liverpool get through here." And sure enough, that's exactly what's happened. Overall, it's a strange one. Obviously, it's the old thing, isn't it? For Newcastle, it's a massive game because it's a cup final, and whether you like it or not, the fact is that you don't need me to say how long it's been since Newcastle won a trophy. So it's a massive occasion for them. For Liverpool, they were down there last year and won it, which, not sure whether you watched the game, was still probably in all my time watching Liverpool was the most ridiculous cup final win. There's no way they should have won it with all the players who were injured and having the youngsters out there. But it said a lot about Jurgen Klopp, the way that he built the club, not just the team, that they're able to get that over the lines. But again, the League Cup, I would imagine it isn't really the priority for Liverpool. It hasn't been the priority for Liverpool this season, and it still isn't because they're still going for the Premier League. But it's a trophy, and for the new manager, Arne Slot, it's the first possible thing he could win. And you look back at there's a number of managers in the past, but I think most recently Jose Mourinho. It's the first chance to win something. I think even Guardiola might have done it as well, actually. And they win it, and it gets that under the belt. So for Liverpool now, it's the next game, but as Slot always says, the next game is the most important. But it's a cup final, so it's a massive game for Liverpool as well as Newcastle.
And there's a difference, isn't there, from it not being a priority and not caring about the trophy?
Yeah. I mean, the thing about Liverpool, with the way that it's gone, and I'm sure it's the same for Newcastle, this is a competition where everyone seems to play. It's a one where all the squad seems to get a game, or certainly a lot of the ones who are going to be in and around the squad. A lot of youngsters have played in it for Liverpool, so they always feel as though when they do achieve something in this competition, such as last year, that it's one where everyone seems to have played a part in it. So from that point of view, it is important. And as I've said, it's a Wembley final, and it doesn't matter how many times you go down and get there, it's still a massive occasion. You still want to win.
There seems to be a little bit of focus on Liverpool's attention to this trophy, and the question about maybe desire and a want, and that Newcastle maybe wants it more because it's been so long since they last won a domestic trophy, 70 years. And obviously, like you said, the Premier League is the priority for Liverpool. Is there a little bit of concern about that, or is it Liverpool are such a good side that although they might not want it as much, when you've got that talent and ability, that maybe counts for more than desire and want to win it?
I think it's an interesting question, that, because it's what happens on the day in terms of everybody who's going down, whether it's the players or the fans from both sides, whoever it is that's there. There's no way that they don't want it once they get there. I think for Liverpool, that this League Cup was not the priority this season, partly also because they won it last year. They had, bigger things to go for. Like, I'll ask you the question then. What would you sooner have, Newcastle in the Champions League or win the League Cup?
Oh, it's the question everyone's asking. From a business point of view, there's only one answer, and it's to win the Champions League, because that's how you're going to get the money in, the revenue growing, and how you're going to add to the squad to hopefully one day be in the position of Liverpool and challenging for the title. But I feel like getting that trophy, the first trophy in all those decades, is really important. Getting the monkey off the back, so to speak, is probably the most important thing right now. But it's getting that balance. And I'm sure those in the boardroom are having exactly the same discussion. It'd be great to have a trophy, but if it comes at the expense of, 60, 70 million pounds of revenue next season, what do you really want? It's a really tough one. It is. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, to be honest.
It's just you're not answering then.
I'm kind of sitting on the fence.
What would your answer be?
I'm gonna say, you know what? I'm gonna say top four, because I think the long-term benefits of that are probably bigger and better than winning the League Cup. But if I'm voting with my heart, I'm saying the League Cup on Sunday. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, the teams have done the hard bit by getting there, so it's not going to impact what they're trying to achieve, whether it's getting into the top four or winning the Premier League this one game. But I'd always say win the cup, always, because you ask the players, they're probably the same as well, if we're being honest. Certainly the fans who go to the games, they want the day out. It's all great going to Wembley, but it's a lot better when you win than when you get beat. And I'm sure if Newcastle win on Sunday, this will be one that everybody who's there, everybody will be watching at home. They'll all remember it far more than, oh, did we finish in the top four that season?
Yeah, no, you're spot on. And actually, what I should have said is my answer is why can't we have both? Why can't
Well,
Newcastle
that's
win the
the
League
thing,
Cup
yeah.
and get the top four? And you are right. Something you've just said there, like it's not going to impact, or it shouldn't do impact the rest of the season. Obviously, Liverpool have got a massive lead at the top of the table, and Newcastle United are going strong in that race for Europe. And you have to hope, whatever the result, at least from a Newcastle point of view, anyway, that it doesn't. If they lose, it doesn't derail the season, and if they win, it hopefully just inspires them and pushes them on more to get that top five spot, what it might possibly be. But yeah, it's a difficult one, and I'm probably going to get pelters in the comments for saying Champions League football. But if I'm voting as a fan, in my heart, definitely the cup. And I want both, to be honest. And it'll be a fantastic day on Sunday if Newcastle manage to win. Talk to me about the impact of Tuesday night for Liverpool in terms of the physicality and the energy, but also the kind of mentality and the mental fatigue of going out of the Champions League to PSG.
I mean, in terms of mentality, I don't think it's going to make any difference, to be honest. I think when you come up against a team like PSG, where it went down to penalties, and it can go either way. I mean, Liverpool weren't particularly great in the first game, but won. In the second game, you could argue for most of the game, Liverpool were the better team, ended up losing. And then you come down to penalties, and it's just one of those things, unfortunately, for Liverpool. And I think a lot of the players thought the same. I think for Liverpool, you've got to bear in mind it was less than 12 months they were getting beat 3-0 at home by Atalanta in the Europa League. So it shows you how far they've come with essentially the same group of players, because they only bought Chiesa in the summer and he's only started 3 games. He doesn't even get on for most of them. So I think from that point of view, yeah, I think in terms of the actual physicality, that it went to extra time. You could tell in the extra time period if you watched the game that while Liverpool could compete for the 90 minutes, once it got into the extra 30 minutes, they were out on the feet and they were just trying to just get get to the penalties. I think really, I think it also underlined, just generally speaking, that with the English league we play that many games and it's so intense. That's where it made a bit of a difference and it favoured PSG, and that's what Newcastle. I know Newcastle played on Monday, but West Ham, for all the best will in the world, they're not quite as good as PSG, and they didn't make Newcastle run around quite as much as PSG made Liverpool run around at times in that game. And for Liverpool as well, it seems like every game's just been ridiculously intense at the moment. They got through the Champions League by finishing top of the new look table, and that was supposed to give them 2 weeks off when they weren't going to be playing the playoffs, and they had to arrange the Aston Villa game they were meant to be playing this weekend, and they had to, for one of the midweeks, then they had to rearrange the derby against Everton, which had been called off in December. So it gave them no benefit whatsoever, really. And Villa away and Everton away, 2 of the toughest games you can get. So if Newcastle have got any bonus from the game on Tuesday, it's that some of the Liverpool players will be even more tired than they were going into that game. And I think if it goes to extra time at Wembley, big pitch, all this, that, and the other, it's going to be difficult for Liverpool.
Talk to us about some of those players. I suppose the one we might start with is Trent Alexander-Arnold, who looks likely to miss the final on Sunday.
Yeah, he won't be playing. In fact, the injury suggests he could be out for a little while, and with the debate over his contract, he's still not signed it. And Real Madrid, he's got an offer from them. While you don't want to say it, there's a chance he might have already played his last game if the injury turns out being quite bad. I mean, the initial thing we've heard, it's not quite as bad as it looked at the time, but he won't be playing in the final. Now, Liverpool also having Conor Bradley, who's the reserve right back, or second choice right back, and Joe Gomez, who's a centre back but also plays right back. They're all out as well. Looks like Jarrell Quansah will be playing at right back, who's a centre back. To be fair, he did quite well against PSG, hit the post with a header, and made his debut from right at Newcastle, coming off the bench last season when Liverpool won 2-1. So it's kind of come round in a big circle for him. But Liverpool be without Trent. They're the injured players. But there's other players who just, like Ryan Gravenberch in midfield's been so important. He plays nearly every game and he looked exhausted after the PSG game. Alexis McAllister's been having his minutes managed. Dominic Szoboszlai is another one who came off against PSG when perhaps you would have thought he might have stayed on because he played quite well. And then Ibrahim Konate, he got centre back. He got it looked like cramp, and Arne Slot since said he'll be fine, but that'll be a concern because Liverpool's other two centre back options, one of them is injured, and the other one's going to end up playing right back. So if he can't make it, or there's any kind of trouble for him, Wataru Endo, who's been playing when he does play, comes off the bench for the last 10 minutes of games. He's been playing in defensive midfield. He might have to play centre back, and Isak's quite good, quite fast, and I think he quite fancy himself up against him.
Your colleague, Theo Squires, who was on the podcast a couple of weeks ago ahead of the league game, he referenced the fullbacks as being the weak point for Liverpool, and the earlier fixture in the season, he said exactly the same. Would you agree with him? That's when Newcastle United, especially with the injury to Trent, can really get at Liverpool on Sunday?
And he might have said that about left back, but Andy Robertson played really well against PSG. And I think he's kind of had an up and down season because he's 31, playing for Liverpool under Klopp's is tough. It tires you out. And we'll get on to some other players in a bit, but he's one who he's been up and down, but I think he's actually been quite good the last couple of weeks. So I wouldn't have any worries about him. Yeah, in terms of right back, Quanta isn't at right back. I think he started right back at Newcastle in the 3-3 game. Back in whenever it was, December. So again, Trent came on in the second half for that one and ended up turning the game to help Liverpool get out with a point and possibly should have won in the end. But yeah, fullbacks, but there's no Anthony Gordon, is there, for Newcastle? And I think that's basically the big thing. I don't think. While I quite like Harvey Barnes, but if he plays, he always does something, but he's not quite Anthony Gordon level.
Yeah, I think if you're a fullback going up against Harvey Barnes, you know what he's going to do. He's kind of got one or two things that he does, and he hasn't got much else to his game. But if they come off, that's cutting inside and hitting it with the right. When it does come off, it looks fantastic, and he often gets a goal. I thought he played well on Monday. I thought he needed a good game ahead of Sunday because we all felt like he was going to play in the final, and what he needed to do to up his confidence is to have the kind of performance against West Ham that he did. Should have scored, got the assist. So I think he'll be up for the challenge of taking on Kwanzaa on Sunday. Who else are we looking at in terms of Liverpool stars who might not quite be at it on Sunday?
Well, there's big question marks over the centre forward position all season. Basically, Liverpool are probably going to end up winning the league without a proper number 9. Diogo Jota started the season, then he got injured and he was out for 3 months, and he's not been the same since he came back in. Darwin Núñez, we could be here all day talking about him, but he actually started all right when he came in. He bought into the team ethic, but then it kind of was at the expense of his goals. I mean, if you look at him last season, the season before under Klopp, a normal game for him would be have about 20 chances, hit the post 5 times and score once. So he's not even getting the chances because of the way Liverpool play now, which is why the wide men have ended up getting more goals. Look at Mohamed Salah. He's got, I've lost count, to be honest. It's 31 or 32. It's a ridiculous amount of goals and assists. It's just really, really stupid. And I saw some people saying, oh, yeah, he didn't have great games against PSG and now he can't win the Ballon d'Or. And it's like, well, it's just the whole recency bias nonsense of football that we have these days. It's like players are allowed to have bad games. And the lad who marked him out of it, he was responsible for Liverpool's goal over in Paris, where he just let Harvey Elliott run off and score. So, again, that's just me getting on my high horse there. But yeah, Liverpool's forward line has been the problem for Liverpool as well is Cody Gakpo, who's been really good all season. He's been missing for quite a few weeks. Came back against PSG, came on as a substitute. He's quite clearly nowhere near fit. If that that little brief evidence is anything to go by. So I think if Liverpool had everybody fit up front, they'd play Gakpo on the left, Salah on the right, and Diaz down the middle, who's been playing on the left. But now, if Gakpo isn't fit enough, it's going to be a strange one because they're going to have to go with either Jota or Núñez down the middle. And I don't think at the moment Slot fancies either of them.
Núñez obviously missed that penalty. Will he react in a way where he wants to show everybody that actually this is the talent I've got, I can make it here? Or do you think he'll be in a bit of a bad mood, a bit of a grump, and that we're playing in Newcastle's hands if indeed he does start?
Who knows? Who knows what he's going to be up to. I mean, it was only on Saturday that he scored Liverpool's equaliser and won a penalty. And over in Paris, he came off the bench, had a good game, and set up the goal. So, if you want to sum up Nunez's career at Liverpool, probably his career overall for everybody, it's the last week. He just seems to go highs to lows to highs to lows. He just can't be consistent. And I think Liverpool have had a lot of time with him. This is his third season, but I'd be amazed if he's there at the start of next season. I think there's one or two clubs looking around, and Slot's already said that the Liverpool are in the market for a new number 9, and there's a guy up in Newcastle who's quite good. I think they wouldn't mind taking him if they could afford him.
Well, I have enjoyed some Liverpool fans, and I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they've been trying to wind Newcastle United fans up, and they've not been serious in their suggestion that that there could be some sort of swap deal lined up, plus a bit of cash for Isak and Nunez comes up to Tyneside, because Newcastle United's board aren't that daft, unfortunately, for Liverpool fans. But yeah, Isak is going to be the main threat. Obviously, you've mentioned the fact we're missing Anthony Gordon, and that was part of the reason in that. Coming into the last week, I think there was a lot of doom and gloom around Newcastle and Tyneside. It didn't feel like we were on the right path for the build-up to the final. They've beaten West Ham. Wasn't the best performance, but they got the win. Harvey Barnes has said good performance. Bruno gets a goal. And there were some real positives. And then Liverpool out of the Champions League, injury to key players, fatigue. And I think it feels like, at least here on Tyneside, the tide is kind of changing in terms of the confidence, but it's going to probably come down to really one man to get the goals, and that's going to be Alexander Isak. Clearly, you're impressed by what you've seen of him. Are you worried about his threat on Sunday?
Well, he always seems to score against Liverpool, so you'd have to be worried from that point of view. I think it could just end up being a battle of which forward line can do the most, because I think in midfield they're quite closely matched. Defensively, I'd say Liverpool have the better defence, but they've now got the injuries, the fatigue, so that might level things out. I know Newcastle have got some players out as well, but it will come down to those forwards, I think. And again, with the big pitch at Wembley, I thought I would have been fearful up against Gordon, but as you mentioned before about Harvey Barnes, good player, but not quite Gordon's level. But Isak is the one, isn't he? They'll have to look to control him. I think they'll have learned a little bit from the games that they played against him already in the last couple of seasons. Well, Van Dijk got sent off, didn't he, for tackling or fouling him, I should say, in the game at Newcastle last year. So I think, yeah, he's the one. But Slot said it himself. He said, I mean, they were expecting him to play, obviously, against Liverpool the other week, where he pulled out with it was a growing problem, wasn't it? Yeah, at the last minute. That was a bit of a boost for Liverpool at the time, I can tell you that. But it's about cutting the service to him. That's what Slot was talking about. And again, the onus then is on the midfield, which is what it has been for most of the season for Liverpool. And what I was mentioning before about this, a lot of those midfielders have played most of the games, and it's just making sure that they're still fresh for Wembley, which a lot of them probably won't be because they've played so often.
Well, that'll be music to the ears of Newcastle United fans, because I do agree with you. I think the midfield's going to be really, really keen. If Bruno, Tonali and Joe Linton are on their best day, then they will push your midfield right to the wire. And whoever wins that battle, I think, does end up winning the game. And we've had Joe Linton out with injury, and he's come back in recent weeks, and he's looked like that tank that we know he can be, and he just brings that physicality. And then you've got Tonali, who kind of sweeps up and puts out any danger and covers so much ground. And then Bruno playing in a more advanced position and grabbing a goal on Monday, but just having a bit more freedom to be a little bit more creative. When you look at Newcastle's midfield three, again, do you look at it and think, yeah, they carry a threat and they could pose a bit of danger to Liverpool on Sunday?
I think Joe Linton may have created the record for most fouls for least amount of bookings for a player in the Premier League. He seems to not get away with stuff, but it takes a lot to get him in the book. But there has been booked a lot, though, hasn't he? Yeah, so it comes back to that's his physicality. Liverpool don't really have that in midfield. They tend to rely more on passing it around. But what I would say is don't underestimate certainly the likes of McAllister. He absolutely loves getting stuck in. And so if it gets into a bit of a scrappy midfield, expect him to be there beating people up in the air and this, that, and the other. And I think sometimes people are a bit surprised by that, but it's probably wise. He's probably to be honest, one of my favourite players who plays for Liverpool at the moment. He's just got everything, and he's able to do it at the other end as well. Although the way they played this season, it doesn't really have to do it because it's been more reliant on the players a bit further up. I think one thing I've noticed about Bruno is that I don't think I've ever seen him have a particularly good game against Liverpool. When he came with this great reputation, and obviously he's done very well for Newcastle, but I think the way that Liverpool play midfield, sometimes it just seems to be a bit too quick for him. I think, and I think Liverpool did look at him for a long time. I suspect that's one reason why they didn't go through. I think it was even before he was at Newcastle, they looked at him, and why they didn't go and pursue a deal, because I think that the only concern about him is his pace, and you know what it's like in the Premier League. And I think the very, very top teams are the ones who've got these quick midfielders. We look at our City when they actually have players available. And I think that's the difference. That's my only reservation over him. But Tonali, he missed an entire season more or less, didn't he? So he's been massively keen this season to make up for that. And I mentioned Joe Linton as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating battle. And, there was a lot of talk on Monday about players maybe, would Eddie Howe rest any players at a Sunday? And he made it clear he wouldn't do, and he didn't. And then would the players playing take a little bit easy? And you had Joe Linton diving in like there was no tomorrow, and he wasn't protecting himself for Sunday. And that, as you say, that physical kind of side of the game that he brings might be absolutely key. But I do also think he's very easily wound up. So that could be some way in for a Liverpool player just to start poking the bear and seeing what they get out of him, because he can be quite a reactive player. I don't know if you're aware about probably the biggest selection debate happening ahead of Sunday. It's about the goalkeepers, Nick Pope or Martin Dubravka. I mean, are you aware of this down on Merseyside, that this is a topic being talked about nearly every single minute of the day in the build up to the final?
Funnily enough, no. But I mean, we were aware of it because it was like we were under the impression Dubravka had been doing quite well, and then it's like, oh, hang on, Pope's in goal now. What's going on? So I think there was a little bit of that. I mean, Liverpool have got not so much a goalkeeper dilemma, but Alisson won't be in goal for Liverpool. It'll be Kelleher, because he's being the domestic cup goalkeeper. So unless something strange happens, it will be Kelleher in goal, who of course has already won the competition twice at Wembley. I think he took a penalty against Chelsea a couple of years ago with the shootout. So I don't think there'll be absolutely no concerns there. And he's played quite a few games this season anyway, because Alisson was out injured for 3 months. Don't forget, if you ask Arsenal fans, Liverpool didn't have any injuries whatsoever. So there's only Arsenal who are allowed to have injuries. That's the thing for Arsenal. But yeah, the goalkeeping situation, that is interesting, because it is funny, because it did get mentioned when Liverpool played Newcastle the other week. So we looked at it going, why is he back in goal? And then I had a look and went, oh, that's a bit strange, because as I said before, we thought Dubravka were doing quite well.
Dubravka had been doing absolutely brilliant, kept a load of clean sheets. Newcastle went on great winning run. And yeah, it's just a little bit strange. And if you watched the game against West Ham on Monday, I think Nick Pope did more, personally for me, to worry me even more about Sunday if he starts, which I think he will do. But it's interesting. We've just recorded a quick Vox Pop in the office, and it's split straight down the middle out of the 6 people we asked. It's 3 versus 3, like in terms of.
What are the concerns? Is his distribution or just his general goalkeeping?
I mean, if you're talking best shot stopper in the league, Nick Pope is up there in the conversation. Eddie Howe's gone on the record and said that, and I agree with him. He's fantastic one-on-one situations. It's just when the ball comes back to him, he's not very good with his feet. You can see he hesitates. The defense don't look confident passing it back, and you don't want that. And what I always say when we have this debate is that when the ball goes back to Nick Pope, I'm glued to it. I have to watch what he's doing. When the ball goes back to Martin Dubravka, I can look away. I'm fine. I'm confident it's going to be dealt with. And that's why I want Martin Dubravka on Sunday, although I do think it'll be Nick Pope. And I guess it leads into the question about how Liverpool play when they're out of possession, which probably won't be all that often on Sunday. But when they are they pressing high? Are they getting in the faces of the defence and the goalkeeper?
Well, that goes back to what we were talking about at the start about who plays up front. Because if Gakpo makes it and he plays on the left, you've got Diaz will probably go down the middle, and the pair of them just like running around, they love to press. Szoboszlai in midfield's the one who, because he plays the number 10 and he's given a little bit more leeway, he'll be somebody else that'll be up there. And you'll probably see that in the first 20 minutes. He'll be running around trying to put Pope, if he's playing, well, whoever the goalkeeper will be, he'll be looking to put him under pressure. Might be a bit different if Nunes plays. He's not reluctant, that's not fair, but he's not quite switched on, shall we say, to these situations. Jota is, but Jota looks very much now like a player who's played for 5 years, playing for Liverpool, running around, and then becoming increasingly injured. He just looks like he's just gone over the hill a little bit, but it's only one game. So, I do think that that will be something Liverpool will look at. But I think it would be just whoever was in goal, to be honest, and whoever Liverpool were playing. They did it against PSG on Tuesday and nearly got a goal or two out of it.
I guess the other big question is, how do you stop Mo Salah? Because not many clubs have managed to do it this season, and with Tino Livramento filling at left back because Lewis Hall is out injured, it's going to be difficult for him. He had a good game against Bowen on Monday, kept him quiet, but we would be a lot more confident if it was Lewis Hall going up against Salah, because he did a good job on him the last time the two met. Sorry, well, at least at St James's Park anyway. How do you stop Mo Salah? What is the secret? Is there a secret?
The funny thing is with Lewis Hall is that I think Eddie Howe said after the game at Anfield, wasn't it, where he said like, "Oh, I thought he did quite well up against Salah." Then he looked at the game and went, "Oh, Salah scored and got an assist," and it's like, and he got two. Don't worry, because this has happened so many times with opposing managers have said, "Oh, he did quite well up against Salah, who only scored the 2 goals." And I know PSG did well against him. That Mendes, we mentioned him before, but yeah, it's tough because he's had games. To be fair, he's had quite a lot of games where it looks like he's not really doing very much. And then you suddenly burst into life. And, for a player who's 32, 33, he's learned he doesn't have to just run around all the time. The interesting thing on that is that it may come down to, we talk about the right back situation. Quance is going to be playing there. I think Salah will be needed to, turn on his defensive head, which he doesn't always have on. I think partly due to instructions from Slot, by the way. I think there was a game at Man City recently where he was back there all the time helping out. But that might be something that Newcastle will look at. But then, of course, the minute that attack breaks down, if it breaks down, Salah's away. And so that's always the threat that he's got, because that's what he's capable of doing. And the one thing he's brought into his game this season is assists. You think he's got like 22 assists, which again is just ridiculous for a player who a couple of years ago was regarded as being selfish. He's probably set up more goals than Southampton have scored.
Yeah, he's fantastic to watch. I'm just hoping he has a bad game on Sunday. But I think Joe Linton's going to be key to that as well, because I can see Joe Linton just dropping back into a bit more of a hybrid role and offering a second body alongside Livramento to try and stop Mo Salah. Because, of course, when Newcastle United get the opportunity to break, and this season we've seen Newcastle have to deal with being a more possession-based side at times, and it hasn't quite worked in their favour. They're not quite comfortable with that. They haven't really got the players to do that. And Andy Howe said that as well. So if they can kind of win the ball off Liverpool when they're in Newcastle's final third and then break, that's when Newcastle, I think, could really have some joy against Liverpool, because they are fast when they move in the transition. They've got some quality players who can get up the pitch with speed. We mentioned right at the start about Liverpool's kind of feeling towards this competition. I'm just wondering, in terms of exiting the Champions League, and I mean, is a reaction needed this Sunday? Because I don't think anyone. Well, I personally, I didn't expect Liverpool to exit in the second leg. I thought at the Kop, 1-0 lead going into the game, they're going through. They haven't done. I don't know what you felt and what actual Liverpool fans felt, but I'm just wondering: A, is a reaction expected, and B, how easy is it to kind of shift that mindset from, it's a final, but we're not too fussed about it, to actually, we're there. We can only win this in the Premier League now, so maybe we should start taking it a little bit more seriously, for want of a better phrase.
I think there's a couple of things here. One of them is it's a trophy. They always want to win it. Liverpool have won this competition more than anyone else, 10 times. So I don't think there's any kind of worries over them not taking it seriously. I think with the PSG game, I think anybody who actually watched the first game were like, these are quite good. You know what I mean? And I thought Liverpool were fortunate to get away with that win. Said before, in the same way that I think PSG, I think overall the draw was the right result. So it wasn't a surprise that they were eliminated in that regard. And because the players have just started to get a little bit tired, as I said before, that'll be something that Newcastle can look at. In terms of not taking the game seriously, and don't take this the wrong way, I think some Liverpool fans will look at, we're not losing to Newcastle. We don't want to be the team that loses to Newcastle in the final. So I really don't think there's going to be any kind of problem with motivation. But what I would say about Newcastle is, before Liverpool played PSG, the two best teams Liverpool have played this season were Chelsea and Newcastle. And Liverpool beat them 2-1 at Anfield. And Chelsea were probably certainly in terms of visitors, were the best team up until PSG. And that game at Newcastle in the first half, Liverpool were lucky to only be 1-0 down. And I know they had one or two changes in the team, but And it was in that kind of spell where they'd played Real Madrid and they'd played Manchester City, I think. But even so, Newcastle played games as well, and they were well up for it. And I think, this Liverpool will look at that second half at Newcastle and the way I was actually quite disappointed with how Newcastle did at Anfield. I know Isak obviously didn't play, Isak, sorry, and Gordon played, and he played that bit of a 4-4-2, wasn't it? And it didn't seem to kind of suit Gordon because I'm not sure he's used to playing in that position. Kind of negated his threat, and Callum Wilson obviously hadn't played for a very long time starting a game. So in that regard, I mean, I was a little bit disappointed with Newcastle, but the way that they're set up, they're not going to make it easy for Liverpool, and it will be a tough game. And one thing about Liverpool in finals, they just never make it easy, even if they win every single time. They never win a final 3 or 4-0. Never happens. Never happens. Even when they win 2-0, there's a goal right at the end to make it 2-0. Everything's a massive struggle. And a lot of Liverpool's games this season have been. There's been very few where they've won by more than 2 goals. For a team that's won that many games in the Premier League and won a lot of games in the Champions League, a lot of them have just been really, really close. Closely fought games, which I think is also another reason why there's a little bit of fatigue, because you can only do that so often before you go, can we not just win a game 4 or 5-0?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you look, on one hand, Liverpool have kind of got this tag as a near unbeatable side. They're absolutely brilliant, storming to the Premier League title. But you look back in recent weeks and you have results, and in games in where they've won. I'm looking maybe at that Wolves game where you think, that they're not maybe as good as the lead at the top of the table suggests. Obviously they deserve to be there, but their performances prove they're not unbeatable. And would Newcastle United fans be right in looking at some of the performances, even maybe against Southampton in the first half, because obviously the changes made the difference? And would they be right to look at these performances and take a bit of hope from them?
I wouldn't pay any attention to the Southampton game. I think that was in between the 2 PSG games, and I think they were not complacent, but I think they thought, we can win this easy. Southampton are rubbish, which of course they ended up winning fairly easy in the end, but they still needed 2 penalties, which they were both penalties, but they still required them. The Wolves game, the second half, they were appalling in the second half, but that was the first real test of, I can't remember what Arsenal had done, something ridiculous. I think Arsenal might have got beat by West Ham or something. They didn't lose to West Ham. They dropped points somewhere along the line. And I think it was the first time where the fans thought, hang on, we've got a chance of winning this now properly. And I think the crowd for a little bit of the game weren't very helpful, but by the end they were, and there hasn't really been a repeat of that, to be honest, and certainly in the home games. But I think because Liverpool have played, Slot's not somebody who likes rotation. He came in and said, "Don't really like rotating players," and we were like looking at him going, "Well, you're going to have to in this league. It's not the Dutch league. You're never going to be able to get through playing the same team all the time." And I think since the turn of the year, there's been a lot more of that. I know he put a reserve team out essentially in the game against Plymouth in the FA Cup. But I'm not one to say that he chucked it, but if he really was going properly seriously with it, he would have put some more senior players out. And he was genuinely fuming after that game because he saw that a lot of the players who played in that game had done well in the League Cup. So he thought, right, I'll put them all in for this game. And it just didn't happen. It just didn't happen. It's just one of those. So I think, can Newcastle take some? I'd look at the game against PSG and look how Liverpool played in the second half and go, oh no, if Liverpool play like that, then we're going to be in a bit of trouble here.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. Just a reminder, ladies and gents, this episode is sponsored by NordVPN. Do hit the link in your podcast description box to get a very exclusive offer on your plan. It's perfect if you're heading down to Wembley on the trains, because you can log on to public Wi-Fi and be protected by your VPN. And don't worry about your account details being stolen or anything like that, because NordVPN has you in safe hands. Ian, just tell us how you think this one's going to go then on Sunday.
Well, it's probably, let's be honest, it's probably going to the penalty just to annoy me, just so I've got to stay there for the whole time. It's like, basically, this whole season has been what can annoy me the most. Sorry to make it about me here, but it's. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a draw penalties. I would be surprised if Newcastle won in normal time. That's the only thing I'd say in it. Other than that, if both teams play to their best, Liverpool win. It's as simple as that.
Okay. Well, it wasn't the total write-off for Newcastle that it might have been in your prediction.
It shouldn't be a write-off. As I said, Newcastle, that game at St James's Park, I think that was Newcastle with the fans and everything at the best. And what I would say is I'm expecting it to be a very good atmosphere. And I think Newcastle, not often that Liverpool fans get outsung, but the way things are, and going back to what you said before about the priorities, I think if you ask Liverpool fans, if you lose, you'd rather win both, but if you could win one, the League Cup or the Premier League, I'm pretty sure they're all saying the Premier League. They're already looking towards the kind of what they hope is going to be a parade at the end of the season, which they didn't get in 2020 because of COVID. So I think people outside of Liverpool don't understand what a massive deal that's going to be if they do end up winning it, because that's just not celebrating one league title, that's celebrating two and celebrating 30 years of not winning it before they won it in 2020. So very much the same way that should Newcastle win against Liverpool on Sunday, and the celebrations, there'll be a parade and all that, I'd imagine, around Newcastle. Don't know when that'd be, probably on the Monday, would it? Yeah, it would be. Now, they all go off for international break, wouldn't they? So it'd have to be,
Yeah, so we don't know yet. It might be end of the season's been
yeah,
touted as one possible date, but whenever it happens, they'll have to shut down the city for a couple of days because
yeah,
it'll be quite the spectacle, because it's been 70 years since a domestic trophy. So,
that's it.
you know, it does matter, and it matters a lot to Newcastle. And it's going to be fascinating to see how the day pans out. You're right, the atmosphere is going to be brilliant from both sets of fans, and hopefully it's a really good game to watch. But from my point of view, it ends with Newcastle United picking up the trophy and the League Cup. Ian, thank you very much for providing the insight into Liverpool. Safe journey down to the capital. To you guys watching and listening, please hit thumbs up, please hit subscribe, get into the comments as well. Give us any feedback on any insight that Ian has delivered. Be kind, and hopefully if you're heading down to Wembley, you'll have a wonderful time, and Newcastle United will beat Liverpool in the League Cup final. I will be down there. If you see me, come and say hello. We'll be doing plenty of content. It'll be a pleasure to chat to you guys. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of the week. Hopefully, it's not too many nerves heading into the final. And I'll catch you guys very soon.